and welcome back to Happiness by Habit, the show where we explore little things that make a big difference in creating a joyful, meaningful life. I am your host, Vanna Pimentel, and today's episode is a celebration of creativity, courage, and using your voice, even when life hands you some tough cards. Joining me today is the incredible, inspiring Anne-Marie Wells. She's an award-winning queen poet, playwright, and storyteller who navigates life with a chronic illness and somehow does it with passion, brilliance, and heart. And Marie's work has been featured across the stage, journals, classrooms, even children's bookshelves. Her journey spans from bilingual children's literature to main stage storytelling, and she's received numerous honors for her impact in the arts and advocacy. Needed world to heal. Today, we will dive into how Anne-Marie uses the written world to heal, connect, and create, and how you can too. Anne-Marie, welcome to Happiness by Habit. I'm so honored to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me, Silvana. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Let's talk about your beginning. Can you share a little bit about how your journey as a poet and playwright began? Was there a moment that sparked your path into storytelling?
Yeah, so I didn't go to school for literature or creative writing or anything, but I always was needing to express myself and organize my thoughts to process my life, to be able to handle all of the struggles. I usually did that through blogging. So I had a blog for most of my adult life, and the blog came about mostly to share information about my life with multiple people at the same time. So I wouldn't
Huh?
have to give every single person the same update, that they could just read my blog and find out what was new with me, particularly when I was going through grad school.
Mhm.
And playwriting just kind of happened to me. I acted in the community theater. I did a couple of plays, small time, nothing like Broadway or anything, just small town community theater. And the theater company was hosting a playwriting competition, and I decided to enter, and my play ended up winning first place. So
Oh,
that was very validating to me, and it pushed me to continue and to keep trying. And I didn't know how to write a play. I had to look it up. I had to Google, how do you write a play? Learn how the structure
interesting.
on the page looks and things like that.
Right.
But I'm a very avid reader. Like some years I read 50 books, some years I read 200 books. I love to read, and I think that has had a big impact on my writing ability. And it
Sure.
wasn't until more recently that I started writing poetry. And I started writing poetry as a coping mechanism when my father was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and his subsequent death and my bereavement process. I never wrote poetry before then. I just became compelled to write a poem when he was very sick in the hospital one night. And since then, I think because coping with poetry had helped me so much, and reading other people's poetry about grieving or about struggle helped me through, that also pushed me to keep going, that I was getting this emotional response from it and this emotional embrace from it, that not only did I feel helped by reading others' poetry, but I was receiving messages from others saying that my poetry helped them. And that kept me going with poetry writing as well. So I have seen the most success with my poetry. I have 2 published collections now. My first collection was published by Curious Corvid Publishing. They're a small press that's based in Ohio, and that was published in 2023. And then my second collection was published a year ago, March of 2024.
Uh-huh.
And that collection, Mother Comma Verb, was a collection in response to wanting to become a mom, but it not happening. It ironically, when the book was launched, I was 9 months pregnant with my
My
son, who's
God.
about to turn 1 year old. So
Wow.
my poetic pleas to become a mom and to enter motherhood were answered. And I was able to launch the book with some good news at the end. So,
So your two babies, your book and your actual baby, are one
yeah,
year old today. Yeah?
close to one. Yeah, close to
Close
one.
to
Hmm.
one. Oh my
Hmm.
goodness, that's amazing. That must have been a really therapeutic experience and so like such a great tool to help you go through these difficult times, right? What is your favorite
Absolutely.
thing to write about, Anne Marie?
Yeah, it's hard to say what my favorite thing to write about. They tend to write on a theme pretty often. Eco
Uh-huh.
poets write about nature and the environment a lot.
Uh-huh.
And I think I tend to be more of a memoirist in general. So a
Okay.
lot of my poems are reflections of what I'm experiencing or have experienced in my life. So when my father was sick, all of my poems had to do with him. Didn't
Right.
necessarily love it as my subject, as my favorite subject, but it just is what came out of me. And I think most recently, I've been writing a lot about my son, about the transition into motherhood and all of its joys and sorrows and struggles and triumphs and
Uh-huh.
that kind of thing. But really, whatever I'm experiencing in my life is what needs to come out onto the page. I love when a poem that I write is really a story, that it's a full story about an event in my life or one moment in time. So I think if I had to say what my favorite thing to write about is I think those little moments that you don't want to forget, those everyday minutia. It doesn't seem important, but then when you remember it, you just say, "Oh, I remember those days, and that was so sweet." And I'm glad that I remembered this moment of my son learning how to use a straw or, something a little bit minimal like that. But, the tiny moments that end up being bigger when you look back on them.
What a best way to make that moment more memorable than writing about it. So that's awesome. People say that to leave a lasting legacy, you need to do three things in your lifetime: plant a tree, raise a child, and write a book. You've done two of the three.
Yeah,
So
I need
a
to
lot of
plant a tree.
oh, that's the easiest part, I guess. You've done the most difficult ones already. And that is something, writing a book is something that a lot of people has kind of in their wishes, like something they wanna do. It's a very common desire of many people.
Mhm.
What kind of recommendations would you give to a person that is thinking about writing a book, but would like some advice on how to get it started?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I'm nobody. I'm not special. Like I said, I didn't go to
Let
school
me
for
stop you
writing.
there. You're special and you're somebody very special. But
Well,
okay, go
what I'm
ahead.
saying is I'm no different from anybody else. So it's not like I
Right.
have this innate talent in me that makes me a writer. I don't think that that's true. I think that I just have trained on my own and practiced and that's what has gotten me to where I am. So anybody can start. You could be 70 years old and you can start today if you've never written before. And my recommendations are to start reading about writing. There are lots of books out there that are guides to learn how to write. They're all good and you can start there. That's where I started. I also took community college classes in creative writing. So I didn't have a lot
Interesting.
of money and I didn't have I didn't have resources. And so I needed to learn what are these resources. I know that somebody has them and I need them. So I started taking community college classes just online and part-time casually to start learning. And the other part that is very important. So those two things are more or less you do it on your own. Like you read about writing and you learn about writing in courses and things. But has really helped me is having a community of writers. I found community of writers in local nonprofits. So I had a literary group where my partner and I used to live in Wyoming that I would take all of their workshops, and they had also monthly writing groups where we would gather and share our work with each other and get feedback and things like that. now I have more online communities. I have a group of my poetry friends. We meet every single Sunday and we talk about what we're working on. And sometimes we give feedback on work, but mostly it's just encouraging each other to keep going.
That's
And I
beautiful.
think
And
having
is
that
that in person or is that
no,
online?
it's all online because we're all in
Oh,
different
that's
places.
wonderful.
I'm here in
Right.
Virginia, another person's in Ohio, another person's in Oregon, one person in Colorado, one person in LA, one person in Vancouver. Like, we're everywhere, but we meet every Sunday. And I think the community aspect is where a lot of people miss out, that they think, oh, writing is a solo activity. Okay, but you still need to have encouragement. You still need to have a sounding board for your ideas. When you're feeling discouraged, it's very helpful to hear other people's stories about how they also felt discouraged. Oh, something very personal to them also got rejected, and this is how they kept going, or this is how they dealt with it. And having that support will keep you going because so many people want to write a book, they get overwhelmed and then they quit, or they finish their book and they try to find a publisher for it. They don't find it right away. Then they get discouraged and then they quit. So I think a lot of people, the obstacle is not just writing the book, it's seeing it through all the way. And I think without my different communities throughout the whole process, it would have been a lot more challenging for me to keep going. But having that support and having that encouragement was everything, was everything. So learn about writing, read about writing, take courses, and find your community. Those are the three things you need to do.
Absolutely. And having a community, I think, is such an important topic or a point, especially, well, it can be for writing a book, for anything pretty much. I think having a community to support you and to explore the different challenges together is very important and can help a lot and can make a big difference. You're
Mhm.
very, very good I love that piece of advice. And I love that you have a really good community. That's great. That's very helpful. Let's switch topics, Anne Marie. You write about your chronic illness, how living with a chronic illness can be very challenging while creating such a rich, meaningful work. What role has writing played in your healing or daily resilience?
Yes, thank you. I mean, that's such a powerful question too. I think so. Let's see. It's 2025 now. So 8 years ago, my gosh, I was diagnosed with interstitial cystitis. It's a degeneration of the bladder lining and it causes a lot of pain and discomfort. Before I was diagnosed, I was just suffering a lot without having any answers. And um, for those who don't know, it takes a lot to be diagnosed with this condition. It's more or less a diagnosis of elimination. So it's not cancer. It's not this. It's not a UTI. It's not an STI. It's not this. It's not this. And so then eventually you get to a point where they say, oh, it must be interstitial cystitis. And then the treatments for that then work. And so then you get your diagnosis. And some people go through other testing to receive their diagnosis. This was the process that I went through, which was just hell to not have answers either, to
For
say,
sure.
I'm not sleeping. I'm in so much pain all the time. As I was doing research on interstitial cystitis, I learned that like 1 in 11 people with interstitial cystitis take their own life.
Oh my goodness.
And it's a very painful and chronically painful condition. So it wasn't until after I got that diagnosis that I could start making changes in my own life. You can't make the changes if you don't know
My
what's
God,
wrong.
for sure. Yes.
So one of the biggest ones was that I had to quit caffeine, and that was very hard for me. I was like a 12 cup a day coffee drinker.
12 cup a day. Oh my God.
And I'm not exaggerating. I loved a Red
Ah,
Bull. I loved energy drinks. I was definitely a caffeine addict. And I remember when I was doing reading on this diagnosis, and it can be caused by excessive caffeine intake. I'm not sure if that's exactly what caused it, but I remember I read that and I still had half a coffee pot left, and I wept as I poured it down the drain. And I just knew that I couldn't have coffee or caffeine ever again. And it means nothing to me now. I don't miss it at all. And in fact, it's been great not having caffeine for waking up early and not needing that jolt in the morning. So I'm not sad that I had to quit caffeine anymore because it's been so long that I've lived without it. But if I do ever have caffeine by accident, I have inflammation and I have resurgence of my pain, and it's very uncomfortable. So there's no temptation to
Right. I
ever
can
have it.
imagine.
But for a long time, I had to avoid lots of foods. So I had to bring down my inflammation markers. And that height of pain and suffering, essentially, I wrote a lot about it. I journaled about it. I did my own kind of personal narrative. It was one of the ways that I coped with it. I also wrote articles about it because people had never heard of it, and people still have never heard
Mm,
of it. But
yeah.
as a result of my writing those articles, I've helped a lot of people. People have reached out to me to say, I have this, and it means so much to me to read your words. You wrote exactly what it feels like. I can share your article with others to read, and it's more accessible than like a medical journal article.
Yeah, for sure.
I've had other friends reach out to me saying, "Oh, my friend just got diagnosed with interstitial cystitis. Will you reach out to her and tell her what has helped you?" That kind of thing. And just knowing that I'm helping other people by being very open about my condition encourages me to stay open and to be vulnerable. I mean, uh it's not sexy or cool to talk about your bladder that doesn't work, but it's a real condition that affects a lot of people. Yeah, so I think that writing has certainly helped with coping, and I'm doing a lot better now. So I barely have symptoms anymore, and I had a prescription that I was taking for a long time, and I don't even have that prescription anymore either. My flare-ups are very uncommon and rare now. It's much more managed. I know that that's not the case for a lot of people, so I want to send my apologies to anybody who's listening right now with interstitial cystitis and suffering. I don't want to make anybody feel like they're doing something wrong if they're still having flare-ups and I'm not. I mean, everybody's body is different and everybody's case is going to be different. This is just my
Your
experience now.
experience. Well, first of all, kudos to you and Marie because a lot of people experience really difficult times or illnesses, and then what they do with that experience is very different, and that can definitely mark your future because what you did is you started looking for solutions, which is
Uh-huh.
definitely very, very important. And it has been, I'm sure it was super difficult and exhausting and heartbreaking at times and overwhelming, but you did it and you found the root cause of this. Therefore, you were able to treat it properly. And I love that you are being such a good gift for the community of people that suffers from this or other diseases that can definitely relate to you and something positive with that. I mean, overcome such a difficult time on their life. So kudos to you,
Yeah,
Anne
and
Marie. That's great.
if I had to find a silver lining to it, which it's hard to find a silver lining to living with a chronic illness, but one of the things that it brought me was a deeper level of empathy for people who suffer with chronic pain. Even if it's not interstitial cystitis, people who have herniated discs in their
Yeah.
spine or people who struggle with chronic migraines, whatever it is, or even foot pain, people who struggle walking because they struggle with chronic foot pain. I just have much more deeper empathy for them because I know what it feels like to just be in pain all day, that you can't sleep because you're in pain. It's hard to interact and be friendly with others because you're in so much discomfort and pain and you haven't slept maybe, and that you're frustrated because you're not getting relief ever. I didn't have relief for so long. So having that deeper empathy, whenever I learn anybody is struggling with chronic pain, I give them a pass. It's like, well,
For
even if they're
sure.
rude to me, whatever it is, I give them
Yeah.
a pass because I know what that feels like.
Absolutely. So I love that what you just say because a lot of times people perhaps act uh, in a way that we don't appreciate it, and is I always believe in that what you just say, giving them like a pass or giving the benefit of the doubt that maybe they had a rough day, maybe, well, they could be suffering from a chronic pain or things that is making them have a difficult time. So
Mhm.
what would you recommend for people that are suffering from a chronic disease? What could you talk about? What would you say about a recommended path for them, or what could you recommend them do to relieve that
Yeah,
pain?
so again, find community. So
That's key, right?
I felt very frustrated trying to share my experience with my friends, and mostly because they were very well meaning, but I would get messages like, "Have you tried meditation? Have you tried essential oils? Did you try acupuncture?" And all of this stuff is just like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I know that you love me and you just want me to not suffer, but you're not helping. But then when I found a support group online, so I had a support group where I was talking to other people, and we were also sharing like the things that people would say to them, like, "Are you drinking enough water?" Like, "Yes, I'm drinking enough water."
Yeah.
And just commiserating with them. And then I also had a in-person support group that I attended for just people who were living with any kind of chronic condition. So it wasn't interstitial cystitis specific. And that was also very helpful to interact with other people. And one of the mantras from that group was, "I don't like it. I don't want it, but I will cope with it." And that has been a mantra even outside of living with this condition, is just for things that you don't have control over, like my father's illness. Like, I don't like it, I don't want it, but I will cope with it. So I think having those support groups definitely helped me more than just my friends and family who didn't know what it was like to struggle with my specific condition or with a chronic condition at all. And I was in my mid 20s when I started suffering with it. And it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I finally got an answer to what was going on with me. You know, that's still a young age, you know, to be struggling like this. So all of my friends, they're young and vibrant. They don't have anything wrong with them. They don't have any kind of chronic condition. And so they can sympathize, but they can't empathize, and they really don't understand what it's like. So having these outside groups, even just with strangers, you know, they're strangers, but they know what it's like to struggle in this way. And it was a reprieve for me to talk to people who knew what it was like, and to just commiserate with them. It definitely helped. And also to brainstorm and different options that actually worked for people and weren't just, you know, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks or what
Mm-hmm.
stuck. So
Mm-hmm.
having people who have been in that specific boat that I was in, giving me actual advice that had helped them, was very helpful. And then also me providing advice like, "This is what I did, and this actually did help me, you know, if it can help other people, whatever."
It's beautiful. I would like to mention that because of this podcast, I had the chance to interview amazing, extraordinary people that overcame really, really harsh situations and diseases, loss, abuse, all kinds of different things. But one common thing I found in these amazing people I had spoken with is that what was different with them was what they did with this. And that's what I see with you also. Like you can experience really difficult times, chronic disease, but what you do with that, you decided, well, you work hard until you found a solution, the diagnosis, how to make it easier to cope with this, and then also you gave back, advising others who are suffering from the same situation. So that's beautiful and remarkable, and I think I praise you for that. That definitely makes a difference. You're changing so many people's lives by helping them going through this situation and coping with what they are suffering. So that really makes a difference. I just wanted to mention that, Anne
Thank
Marie.
you. Thank you.
Yes. Also, I wanted to say earlier in the conversation, you mentioned about how you can experience joy and savoring every second of your experience now with your kid. And you know, the topic or the title of this podcast is Happiness by Habit. And I would love to ask you one of my favorite questions. What are some happy habits you have that you implement in your life, Anne Marie?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest ones that has certainly contributed to the way that I view the world is that at the end of every single day, and I mean every single day, not almost every day, I mean every single day, my husband and I ask each other, what delighted you today? And it's just a simple question, but then we do an inventory of the day of the little moments that brought us joy. And it is different, I think, from having a gratitude list or a gratitude journal, because for me, and I don't want to speak for everybody, especially when I was struggling or grief stricken, I would feel guilty for not being grateful. To say, oh, I need to be grateful that I have a roof over my head. I need to be grateful that I had 3 meals today. And that kind of repetition also felt forced. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel organic. And I don't know, for me it was more, it built more guilt in me that I wasn't grateful enough for everything that I had. And if I was still sad despite having everything that I had, and then there was something wrong with me, that was the feeling that I would get. So having this exercise in instead listing everything that delighted me that day. And sometimes it's just, pretty simple things like, oh, I got a good parking spot at the grocery store, or the
Simple
pizzas we
things
like
like
were on
that.
sale.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, our lists are very basic. Like it delighted me that, I don't know, that we didn't get any bills in the mail today.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So, or, it can be something as simple as, as I was driving, there was no crazy drivers today as I was driving home, or, and also cute things that my son does. He's almost 1 year old, and he's very cuddly and affectionate, and he's working on learning new words. And so just him like crawling up to my legs and going, Mama, like that delighted me.
For
And
sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Or, I lost, a certain shirt that I was looking for, and then I found it. That delighted me. And just maintaining this daily inventory of these little tiny things. And it's not, I'm so grateful that I found my lost shirt. It's just, I was delighted by it. And because we have cultivated this as a habit, now I'm looking for things throughout the day that delight me. So my brain then makes intentional note of the little things that delighted me. Oh, I was delighted by that there was no line at the grocery store, things like that. And then, oh, I'm going to make sure to tell my husband about that.
And what you focus on expands. So you're looking for opportunities to appreciate something good that happens to you. So naturally, those things are going to be more noticeable and therefore are going to be more like relevant in your day. So that's beautiful.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm gonna borrow that technique from you, Anne Marie. That's really
Yeah,
nice.
good. I'm glad. You can let me know how it goes.
Yes, for sure. Yes, yes, yes. I wanted to go back to another comment you made earlier about coping, how difficult it is for a person that suffers from a chronic illness and how they can feel like people are not empathic with them or they are not, even though they mean well, they try to help, but it's not helpful. So I would like to touch on that because a lot of times people that have, well, in this case, they are your friends, your family or relatives that they really want to help, but they are not helping. Therefore, furthermore, they are even hurtful with their comments. So what could be a good way to be more helpful from that point of view? What is a good way to help somebody who suffers from a chronic disease and to be more
Yeah.
mindful?
That's a great question. Thank you so much for asking it. And I think because it is so hard to watch someone we love suffer, we want to fix it. And actually, it is a form of empathy. Like watching you suffer hurts me, so I want you to be fixed, right?
Yes. Want that to
And
stop.
so, yeah, so I think just taking into account that it's not about you, that you are not the fixer. And especially if you're not an expert in it or you're not struggling with the exact same thing. And even if you are, let's say, your friend struggles with clinical depression and you also have clinical depression, and maybe some sort of medication helped you and you're trying to push it on your friend. You don't know that that's going to help them and you want to share what has helped you, that's great. But the person has to also be willing to listen. So I think that instead of having a mentality of trying to fix, of just having a mentality of support. And oftentimes I felt like I can't even say how much pain I'm in right now because so and so doesn't want to hear it. Or if I do, then they're going to be like, oh, why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you doing that? And that's not what I need. I just need somebody to listen to me and say, that sucks. And that's it. I'm so sorry you have to deal with that. That sounds awful, period.
And just sip it. Don't say
And not
anything else,
trying
just
to
to
come up,
hear you.
yeah, not coming up with solutions, but just being present and saying, I'm so sorry you have to deal with that. It sounds awful. And, and that's it.
Perhaps it can be follow up with a question of, is there anything I can do to help? That
Mm-hmm.
can be also. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah.
Without being invasive, because whatever that person might need is definitely very different to what that person thinks that the other person needs.
Yeah, and maybe the answer to that question, is there anything I can do, will just be like, you can listen to me
That's
and
right.
that's it. Or just be here for
Yes.
me as I complain. Listen to me complain about this 77 times in a row in the same day. That's what you can do.
Right. That's good. That's very good. I really appreciate that. That's very important. And it can help a lot of people that really want to help, but just to be more helpful, just to help
Hmm.
them be more helpful. Alrighty. Interesting. One thing I would love to know, Marie, you have gone through a lot of things and you've been persistent and you've been doing a lot of really amazing, accomplishing amazing stuff. And I would like to know, what is your motivation? What is your why, your reason?
Thank you. Yeah. So I think that every project has its own deeper why, and that pushes me to complete it. And for my projects that don't have this bigger why, I find that my motivation flounders and I don't usually see it to fruition. So with my first poetry collection, Survived By, that was a memoir in verse that chronicled my experience caring for my dad at the end of his life and then my subsequent grief process. My deeper why for that book was not only to honor my father and his legacy and in a way keep him alive in my life. It was also a way for me to provide support to other people who were grieving. When I was struggling, I I was just looking for any kind of solace. And I did read other books. I read certain poems and they were helpful, but I didn't find a full book that really touched me the way that I needed to be embraced. And so I
Mm-hmm.
ended up writing that book myself. And writing that book was helpful for my own healing. Even rereading it, by the time it was published, it was 3 years after my father had passed away. And the amount of times I reread it for revisions and editing through the editorial process and publication, it was so healing for me to read it over and over and to read about my experience. And then it was healing to read readers' responses to the book of how it was helpful to them, how it was so true to the grieving process, especially losing a parent to cancer. And having those responses from people was so helpful. It was my deeper why. I wrote that book for them so that they would feel less alone. And so to get that validation that my deeper why came true was so helpful. So I think with each project, there's a deeper why. And I'm still working on a travel memoir. This has been 8 years in the making from when I went traveling in Iceland for my 30th birthday. And my deeper why that keeps me going, even going on 9 years of trying to get this book published and not getting over the finish line, is because I need to say thank you to the Icelandic people and all of their warmth and generosity that they showed me. I don't feel like I can just have had the trip that I had and then forget about it. So this deeper why keeps me going with that project, that I can't let it go. And so I think, yeah, I don't have kind of like a general motivation. It's more of very specific to each project that I'm working on.
Yes, That's true. Very nice. And Marie, what are you working on? What can we expect from you in the next few months?
Yeah, well, a lot. So, like I said, I have this travel memoir that I'm always working on and sending it out to literary agents, revising. The most recent event, I had a mentorship last summer um, that helped me a lot in developing the manuscript. And so now I have this even more polished manuscript to send out. So I'm still sending it out. I'm also working on a kids activity and coloring book.
Oh, that's
So
nice.
I was hired by an international nonprofit called Ethical Seafood Research, and they work with aquatic farms to have more ethical farming practices for animals. And so they hired me to write and creatively direct the content for a kids' activity book that has to do with aquatic environments and animals and learning about them in the ocean, ponds and lakes and streams and rivers, and have it be, including crosswords and connect the dots and, those kinds of things. And I found an illustrator. He's from Spain, but he lives in Japan, and he has been taking my ideas. So each page I had like what should be on the page, and he's been bringing them to life. And so every time he sends me a new illustration, I put it into the layout design that I created. So I think probably by summer, that activity book, it's called Underwater Explorers and Rescuers. And
Mm,
so that'll be coming to shelves near you. And I
very
would love to
nice.
do more of that. It was so much fun to work on this project, or it continues to be fun to work on this project. So I would love to do more of that if possible. And then I have another poetry collection that I've been sending out to contests and to publishers for potential pickup. It's a reflection of motherhood. I call it Home Address, and it's a reflection of what makes a home versus just an address. And it has little vignettes of different places that I have called home and that were just an address as well. And so I've been sending that out. So hopefully that finds a home too, and just kind of add to my bibliography in this way. And
That's
I
beautiful.
constantly have new ideas. Some of them, don't make it across the finish line, and then some of them do. So, yeah.
Nice. If you could leave us with one final thought about today's conversation, what would that be?
Yeah, I think that the overall theme of our conversation is community, that you don't
Mhm.
need to do anything alone, whether you're starting out a new hobby. If you are struggling in some way, there is a community out there, and you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to learn alone. You don't have to suffer alone, and you don't have to celebrate alone. There are also people out there who want to celebrate with you and to bolster you and to hold you up as well. So if you haven't already found your community, or if your community isn't providing you what you need, I just encourage everybody to go out and find it. And you can start on Facebook. There are Facebook groups for everything, everything. That's where I found my support group for interstitial cystitis. And then it dominoed from there. And to check local nonprofit groups, if there are communities that do virtual, and you can join in on a virtual group. It's so important. It can provide support in many different ways and avenues.
Absolutely. I agree with that topic that building a community or being part of a community can be a game changer. So definitely encourage everybody to join a community to give you support and for you to support as well. That will be amazing. So thank you again, Anne Marie, for this beautiful, soulful conversation. Your journey is a reminder that the storytelling isn't just art, it's advocacy, healing, and a powerful act of resilience. So to everyone tuning in, if you would like to explore more about Anne-Marie's work, be sure to check out her poetry, plays, and children's book. And keep an eye out for her powerful pieces in journals and on the stage. Follow her journey, storytelling, and don't forget to share this episode with someone who needs a little inspiration today. This has been Happiness by Habit, where we build joy, one habit, one story, one breath at a time. I'm Silvana Pimentel, and thank you so much for listening. I will catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye.